A stranger at church said, "Your son asked me how to get power of attorney fast." I thanked her and smiled. That week, I transferred everything.
Wait, stop right there. Can you imagine? You're just minding your business at church, and a total stranger tells you your son is plotting to take your life over. I'm Grace, and honestly, this story about Doris proves that sometimes your gut feeling is the only thing you can trust.
She caught me right after the service when everyone was milling around the coffee table pretending the donuts weren't stale. I didn't know her name, just her face, the way you know faces in a small congregation. Gray hair pinned back, reading glasses on a beaded chain, the kind of woman who probably volunteered for every bake sale since 1987. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she said, touching my elbow like she was afraid I might bolt. "Doris Whitmore? That's me." She glanced around, then leaned closer. Her breath smelled like peppermint and something medicinal. "I work at Barton and Associates, the law office on Maple. You know the one?" I nodded. Earl and I had driven past it 1,000 times. Never had reason to go in. "Your son came to see us last Tuesday," she said. Her voice dropped so low I had to tilt my head. "He asked how fast we could push through a power of attorney. Said his mother was having memory issues, trouble managing her affairs." She paused, watching my face like she expected me to crumble. "He wanted to know if it could be done without you present, just with a doctor's letter." I stood there with my paper cup of weak coffee, the cream already separating into sad little swirls, and I felt something inside me go very still. Not broken, not even surprised, if I'm being honest. Just still, the way a pond goes still before a storm rolls in. "I see," I said. "Thank you for telling me." "I probably shouldn't have," she admitted. "But I've got a mother too. And what he was asking, it didn't sit right with me." I reached out and squeezed her hand. Her skin was papery and cool, like mine. "You did the right thing." She nodded once, quick and nervous, then disappeared into the crowd heading for the parking lot. I watched her go, still holding that terrible coffee, still smiling the way you smile when your face has forgotten how to do anything else. My name is Doris Whitmore. I'm 71 years old. I raised one son, buried one husband, and paid off one house. The same house on Chestnut Lane that Earl and I bought in 1981 when the neighborhood was still full of young families, and the oak tree out front was skinnier than my arm. That house has seen 43 years of my life. Christmases and funerals, measles and math homework, the slow weight of grief after Earl passed, and the slower weight of realizing that my son had become someone I didn't quite recognize. I drove home from church that Sunday with the radio off. The silence felt necessary, like pressing a cold cloth to a fever. I kept both hands on the wheel, 10 and 2, the way Earl taught me back when we were courting, and he let me practice in his father's Plymouth. My hands weren't shaking. I noticed that. I thought they would be. The thing about betrayal is that it rarely arrives all at once. It seeps in through cracks you didn't know were there, and by the time you notice the water damage, the whole foundation's already soft. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a minute, looking at the house. The gutters needed cleaning. I could see the leaves poking up like little brown flags. The porch railing had a wobble I kept meaning to fix. Earl would have fixed it in an afternoon, grumbling the whole time about cheap lumber, but he would have fixed it. 12 years gone now, and some things just stayed broken. The paint was peeling by the front window, little curls of white flaking off like dead skin. I'd meant to have it redone last summer, but then my hip was acting up, and Craig had said he'd look into some painters, and of course nothing ever came of it. Nothing ever did when Craig was involved, unless there was something in it for him. Inside, the house smelled like it always did, a little dusty, a little like the lavender sachets I kept in the linen closet, a little like decades of cooking and living and being. The floorboards creaked in all the familiar places. By the coat closet, in front of the bathroom, right at the bottom of the stairs, where Earl had always meant to add an extra nail but never got around to it. I set my purse on the kitchen counter, right next to the ceramic rooster that had been sitting there since 1989. Earl won it at the county fair, some ring toss game where he'd spent $15 trying to win a $5 prize. "But you wanted it," he'd said, handing it over with that crooked smile of his. "And I wanted to be the man who got it for you." I touched the rooster's faded comb and felt the past pressing against my chest like a weight. Then I looked at the phone. Craig's number was right there in my contacts. I could call him, ask him directly. "Did you go to a lawyer's office and tell them your mother was losing her mind?" But I already knew what he'd say. He'd laugh it off, make me feel foolish for asking. "Mom, you're being paranoid. Who told you that?" They must have misunderstood. And then he'd change the subject, probably ask about the house again. When was the last time I had the roof inspected? Did I know how much property taxes had gone up? Wasn't it a lot of work for a woman living alone? I didn't call. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, the one Earl built himself back when we were too broke to buy furniture. The wood was scarred and water-stained now, but I could still see the grain he'd sanded smooth, still feel the little dip in one corner where Craig had gouged it with a screwdriver when he was 8. He'd been trying to build a robot. That's what he said anyway. He had all these grand plans, little Craig, always dreaming up inventions and contraptions. Earl and I would listen to him explain how he was going to build a machine that cleaned his room or a car that flew, and we'd nod along like it was the most brilliant thing we'd ever heard. What happened to that boy? The one with the big dreams and the screwdriver marks? I keep a count in my head. I can't help it. Since Earl died, Craig has visited 47 times. I know because every visit sticks in my memory like a burr. And every single one of those 47 visits came with a reason attached. A favor, a request, something he needed. Never once in 12 years has my son driven the hour and a half from his house to mine just to have coffee with his mother. Not once. Not on my birthday, unless he needed to discuss finances. Not on the anniversary of his father's death, unless he wanted to talk about what to do with Dad's tools. There's always a purpose. Always an angle. Always something he's working toward. 47 visits. 47 asks. I used to tell myself that's just how he was. Practical. Busy. A man with his own life and his own pressures. I made excuses for him the way mothers do, paving over the cracks with good intentions and wishful thinking. But sitting there that Sunday afternoon, with the afternoon light coming through the kitchen window and the tea going cold in my cup, I couldn't make any more excuses. The woman at church had handed me a gift, even if it didn't feel like one. She'd handed me the truth. And the truth was this. My son was trying to take my house out from under me while I was still breathing in it. The next few days passed in a strange kind of fog. Not the confused fog Craig apparently told the lawyers about. My mind was sharp as a tack. Thank you very much. But the fog of someone trying to look at their life from the outside, trying to see what they missed. I started paying attention to things I'd let slide. The phone calls, for instance. Craig had been calling more often lately. 2-3 times a week, when usually I was lucky to hear from him once a month. And the questions had a theme I hadn't noticed before. Mom, where do you keep your important documents? Just in case something happens and I need to find them. Have you thought about getting a safety deposit box? Or do you still keep everything in that old filing cabinet? Patrice was saying the other day, her parents have all their paperwork organized in one place. It makes things so much easier for the family. Patrice, my daughter-in-law. I've known that woman for 22 years, and I still can't figure out what my son sees in her. She's got a face like she's always smelling something slightly off, and a way of saying your mother instead of my name that makes me feel like a piece of furniture she's been stuck with. The first time Craig brought her home to meet us, back when they'd been dating for about 6 months, she walked into our kitchen and immediately started rearranging things. Not obviously, not in a way I could call her out on, just little adjustments. Moving the salt shaker from the left side of the stove to the right, turning the coffee mugs so all the handles faced the same direction, straightening the dish towel so it hung perfectly even on the oven door. Earl noticed, too. Later that night, after they'd left, he'd looked at me and said, "That one's got her own idea of how things should be. Watch out for that." I should have listened. Last month she'd called me herself, which should have been my first warning sign. Patrice never calls unless she wants something, or unless Craig has put her up to it. "Doris," she'd said. Not Mom, never Mom, always Doris in that clipped voice of hers. "Craig and I have been worried about you. You seem tired lately. Are you sleeping okay? Are you eating enough?" I'd told her I was fine. Because I was fine. I am fine. I do the crossword every morning. I drive myself to church and the grocery store. I remember every birthday and every appointment. The only thing wrong with my mind is that I spent too many years not using it to see what was right in front of me. That Wednesday, Craig showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. The same chipped plates Earl and I had eaten off of for 30 years, the ones with the little blue flowers around the rim that had mostly faded now. When I heard his car pull in, I recognized the sound of that engine. A German thing, too expensive for what he makes, but Patrice insisted they needed a reliable family vehicle. Never mind that they only have one child, and she's 19 and away at college. I dried my hands on the dish towel, the same one Patrice had straightened 22 years ago, and waited. He came in without knocking, the way he always did. "Mom? You here?" "Kitchen," I called back. He appeared in the doorway holding a manila folder, and my stomach did a slow roll. He was wearing his work clothes, dress shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled up like he'd been doing something important. Craig worked in insurance. Claims adjustment, whatever that meant. He talked about it like it was brain surgery, but from what I could tell, he mostly sat in meetings and told people why they couldn't have what they'd paid for. "Hey, Mom." He crossed the room and kissed my cheek, a quick peck that landed somewhere near my ear. "You look good." "House looks good." "It's the same house it's always been." Right. He pulled out a chair and sat down, setting the folder on Earl's table. I noticed he put it right on top of the gouge mark, like he was trying to cover it up. "Listen, I was in the area, had a client meeting in Riverside, and I thought I'd stop by. Save me a trip next weekend." In the area. Riverside was 45 minutes north. My house was an hour and a half south of where he lived. The math didn't add up, but I didn't say anything. "Can I get you some coffee?" Sure, whatever you've got." I poured him a cup from the pot I'd made that morning. It was burnt by now, but he wouldn't notice. Craig never noticed things like that. He'd drink burnt coffee, eat cold food, wear mismatched socks. None of it registered unless Patrice pointed it out. The man lived his whole life waiting to be told what to think. "So," he said, tapping the folder with one finger, "I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Just some practical stuff. Nothing to worry about." "What kind of practical stuff?" He opened the folder and spread out the papers inside. I saw my name typed at the top of the first page, my address, and two words that made my blood run cold. Power of attorney. "It's just a standard thing," Craig said, and his voice had that smooth, rehearsed quality I recognized from when he used to lie to me about finishing his homework. "Everybody does it these days. You set it up now, while you're healthy, and then if anything ever happens, a stroke, a fall, anything, I can step in and make sure your bills get paid, your house gets taken care of. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." I looked at the papers. My name was already filled in. The date line was blank. "Patrice's parents did this years ago," he continued. "It just makes things simpler. For everybody. For everybody, right. And you need me to sign this today?" He shrugged, but his shoulders were tight. "Doesn't have to be today. But I've got the papers here, and we could just knock it out real quick. I brought a notary. Well, she's waiting in the car, actually. Works at my office. She could come in and witness the whole thing. 10 minutes? Done." A notary, in the car. He'd brought a notary. I felt the weight of that settle over me like a cold blanket. He'd planned this. Practiced it, probably. Driven an hour and a half with a coworker in the passenger seat, ready to make everything official before I had time to think. I picked up the first page and pretended to read it, though the words were swimming. I wasn't confused. I was furious. But fury, at my age, doesn't help anything. Fury makes you say things you can't take back. And I needed to take my time. I needed to think. "This is a lot to look at, Craig." "It's really not, Mom. It's standard boilerplate. Still, I'd like to read it carefully. Maybe show it to someone." His jaw tightened. Just a flicker, but I saw it. "Show it to who?" "Mom, this is family business. We don't need to bring strangers into it." I didn't say strangers. I said someone. Maybe Walter Hendricks. You remember Walter? He and your father were friends for 40 years. He used to be a lawyer. Walter Hendricks is what? 85? 90? 79? And sharp as ever. Craig sat back in his chair, and I watched him recalculate. He hadn't expected pushback. In all those 47 visits, I'd never given him pushback. I'd signed what he asked me to sign, agreed to what he suggested, smiled and nodded and made things easy. "Fine," he said finally. "Take your time. Look it over. But don't take too long, okay? These things need to be in place before something happens. I'm just trying to protect you, Mom." "I know you are." I said it with a straight face. I don't know how. He left the folder on the table. "Just in case you want to review it," and went out to tell the notary she wasn't needed after all. Through the kitchen window, I watched him walk to his car. He was talking on his phone before he even reached the door, probably telling Patrice that the plan hadn't worked. I waited until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I picked up the folder and carried it to Earl's old desk in the spare room, the one we used to call the office even though it was barely bigger than a closet. I sat down in Earl's chair. The leather was cracked now, held together with electrical tape in places. And I read every word of those papers. And then I read them again. "Standard boilerplate," Craig had said. "Just in case something happens." But there was nothing standard about giving someone total control over your money, your house, your life. Nothing standard about signing away your right to make your own decisions. And there was definitely nothing standard about a son who showed up with a notary in the car, ready to push the papers through before his mother had time to think. I set the folder aside and opened the top drawer of Earl's desk. Inside, under a pile of old receipts and rubber bands and a broken pocket watch Earl had always meant to fix, was a small brass key. the key to the filing cabinet where I kept the important things, the deed to the house, the insurance policies, Earl's death certificate, our marriage license, yellowed now with age, and something I'd almost forgotten about, a handwritten letter, folded and sealed, that Earl had given me the week before he died. "Don't open this unless you need it, Dory," he'd said. His voice had been weak by then, barely louder than a whisper, but his eyes were still sharp, still knowing. "You'll know when that is." I'd kept it sealed for 12 years. Partly because I didn't want to know what was inside, partly because I kept hoping I'd never need it. Partly because opening it would mean admitting that Earl was really gone, that whatever wisdom he'd wanted to share was the last I'd ever get from him. But sitting there in his chair, with my son's power of attorney papers on the desk beside me, I finally understood what Earl had meant. I needed it now. The letter was written on yellow legal paper, the kind Earl used for everything. His handwriting was shaky. He was already sick when he wrote it, his hands not working the way they used to. But the words were clear. "Dory," it said, "if you're reading this, things have probably gone sideways. I'm sorry I'm not there to help, but I need you to hear me. Take care of yourself first. The kids will figure it out. They always do. But you come first now. Don't let anyone tell you different. I mean it. You spent your whole life putting everyone else ahead of yourself. Time to stop. I love you. I'll always love you. But you have to love yourself too. E." I read it 3 times. The 4th time, I let myself cry. Not loud crying. Not the kind that racks your whole body. Just quiet tears rolling down my cheeks, dripping onto the yellow paper, blurring some of Earl's words. I let them fall. I'd earned those tears. Earl knew. Somehow, even back then, even before Craig turned into whoever he was now, Earl knew. He'd seen the way our son took and took without giving back. He'd watched me make excuse after excuse, smoothing things over, pretending everything was fine. And he'd known that one day I would need permission to put myself first. So he gave it to me, in writing, in his own shaky hand. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and set the letter down. Then I reached for my phone. Walter Hendricks picked up on the 2nd ring. "Doris? That you?" "It's me, Walter." "I'm sorry to bother you." "No bother at all. Helen and I were just watching some game show where people yell at each other over suitcases. You're doing me a favor." I heard him moving, a door closing, the squeak of what was probably his old recliner. "What's on your mind?" I told him. All of it. The woman at church, the papers Craig brought, the notary waiting in the car. I told him about the phone calls asking where I kept my documents, about Patrice suddenly being concerned for my health. I told him about the 47 visits and the 47 asks, and how my son had never once in 12 years stopped by just to see me. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, slow and steady, the way he always breathed when he was thinking something through. "Doris," he said finally, "you're sharper than half the clients I had when I was still practicing. And you own that house, free and clear. It's been paid off since, what, the 90s? 94. Last payment was June of 94. Earl made a big deal of it, bought a bottle of champagne, the cheap kind from the grocery store, and we sat on the porch and drank it straight from the bottle like we were teenagers." "That sounds like Earl." I could hear the smile in Walter's voice. "So here's the thing. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can take that house from you without your signature. Power of attorney doesn't transfer ownership. What it does is give someone the ability to act on your behalf, pay your bills, make decisions if you're incapacitated, but it doesn't give them your property. Then why is Craig pushing so hard? Because once he's got that power, he can do a lot of damage. He could move your money around, make financial decisions you'd never agree to. And if he can get a doctor to say you're not competent, well, then he's got a real weapon. He could put you in a facility against your will. He could sell the house for your benefit, and you'd have a hell of a time fighting it. My grip tightened on the phone. So what do? You protect yourself. You get your own paperwork in order. A trust, maybe. Something that keeps the house out of reach. You update your will. You make it absolutely clear who gets what and under what circumstances. And you do it now, before he gets his ducks in a row. Can you help me with that? Doris, I've been retired for 8 years. My license is inactive and my brain isn't what it used to be. But I know some people, good people, honest people who won't try to fleece you. Let me make some calls in the morning. Can you come into town Tuesday? I'll be there. Good. And Doris? Don't sign a damn thing until we talk. Not a single piece of paper. You understand? I understand. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. But it was a different kind of shaking now. Not fear. Something closer to purpose. Like a pilot light catching after years of being out. I went to the kitchen and made myself another cup of tea. A fresh one this time. I stood at the window and watched the oak tree in the front yard, its branches bare and black against the evening sky. That tree had been skinny as my arm when we moved in. Now it was thick enough that it would take 2 people to wrap their arms around it. 43 years of growing while my family grew and changed around it. Craig used to climb that tree when he was small. He'd shimmy up to the lowest branch and sit there crowing like a rooster, so proud of himself. Earl would stand below, pretending not to be terrified, telling him to be careful, telling him to come down. I wondered when my boy became someone who would try to steal from his mother. Was there a moment? A turning point I missed? Or had it happened slowly, like water wearing down stone, so gradual that by the time you noticed, the shape of everything had changed? I didn't have answers. I only had questions, and a manila folder full of papers I would never sign. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Craig didn't call, which meant he was waiting for me to come to him, to fold the way I always had. Patrice didn't call either, which was normal. She never called unless she wanted something. I spent the time getting my thoughts in order. I pulled out all my financial records, bank statements, insurance policies, the deed to the house, the paperwork from Earl's pension. I made lists. I took notes. I did the work I should have done years ago, the work I'd let slide because it was easier to trust that my family had my best interests at heart. Here's what I found. The house was worth about $380,000, according to the tax assessment. Not a fortune, but not nothing either. Enough to make a real difference in someone's life. Enough to be worth scheming for. I had Earl's pension, which paid out monthly, and my own Social Security. Between the two, I had enough to live on comfortably, as long as I didn't do anything stupid. My health insurance covered most of what needed covering. My car was paid off. My bills were manageable. My savings account had about $60,000 in it. What was left after all the loans to Craig over the years, the down payment for their house, the money for their new roof when the old one started leaking, the check I wrote when Patrice decided Amber needed to go to private kindergarten because public school wasn't good enough for her precious daughter. $40,000 for the down payment alone. I still remember the day Craig asked me for it. He'd come over with Patrice, both of them dressed up like they were going to a job interview, and they'd sat at my kitchen table and explained how they'd found their dream house, but the bank wanted a bigger down payment, and they were so close, Mom, so close to having everything they wanted. "We'll pay you back," Craig had promised. "Every penny. Think of it as a loan." That was 15 years ago. I'd never seen a cent. I didn't keep a formal record, but I remembered. Every time Craig came to me with his hand out, I remembered. The new car after his old one got totaled. Not his fault, he said, though the insurance company disagreed. The credit card debt from their destination wedding in Hawaii, because Patrice had always dreamed of getting married on a beach. The emergency when Patrice's sister needed surgery, and of course the family had to help, even though I'd never met the sister, and certainly wasn't family. Every time, I said yes, because he was my son, because that's what mothers do, because I told myself it was just money, and you can't take it with you anyway. But the house was different. The house wasn't just money. The house was 43 years of my life. It was Earl's workshop in the garage, still full of his tools, still smelling faintly of sawdust and motor oil. It was the garden where I planted tomatoes every summer, the same spot where Earl had proposed to me back when we were young, and the yard was nothing but dirt and weeds. It was the bedroom where both my children were conceived, Craig and the daughter we lost at 6 months, the one we never talk about. It was the kitchen where we ate 10,000 meals together, the living room where we watched the moon landing and the Berlin Wall coming down, and our son's first steps. You can't put a price on that. But apparently, Craig and Patrice had tried. On Monday afternoon, I was sorting through old photographs when the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I get those robocalls like everyone else, the ones about car warranties and credit card interest rates. But something made me pick up. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Janet from Doctor." "Peterson's office?" "Yes." "I'm calling because we received a request for your medical records." "From your son?" "He said he was updating your healthcare information and needed copies of your recent visits." My hand tightened on the phone. I didn't authorize that request. "Oh." A pause. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. "Well, we can't release anything without your written consent, of course. I just wanted to verify, since he seemed very insistent." He mentioned something about memory concerns. "Janet, my memory is fine. I can tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, what I watched on television last night, and what my blood pressure was at my last appointment. And I don't want anyone accessing my medical records without my explicit permission. Can you make a note of that?" "Absolutely, Mrs. Whitmore." "I'll flag your file right now." I thanked her and hung up. And for a long moment, I just stood there in the kitchen, looking at the phone in my hand. He was building a case. That's what this was. Craig was trying to collect evidence that I was incompetent, that I couldn't manage my own affairs, that I needed someone to step in and take control. The visit to the lawyer's office, the questions about my documents, the call to my doctor. He was putting together the pieces, one by one, like assembling a puzzle where the final picture was my life being taken away. The chickens were coming home to roost, as my grandmother used to say. Only the chickens weren't mine. Tuesday morning, I drove into town to meet with the lawyer Walter had recommended, a woman named Sarah Chen, who had an office in a building that used to be a hardware store. The old sign was still visible under the new paint if you looked closely. Hendricks Hardware, it said, though all that was left was a ghostly outline. Sarah was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with short gray-streaked hair and no-nonsense glasses. Her office was small but tidy, and she had a plant on the windowsill that looked like it was actually being cared for, which I took as a good sign. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that was firm but not aggressive. "Walter's told me a lot about you and about your situation. Please, call me Doris. Doris. She smiled, just a little. Let's sit down and figure out how to protect you. We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything: the church, the papers, the medical records request. She listened carefully, taking notes in a yellow legal pad that reminded me of Earl's letter. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me over her glasses. Doris, I'm going to be direct with you. What your son is doing isn't illegal, not yet. He hasn't forged your signature or stolen your money. But what he's doing is predatory. He's setting up a situation where he can claim you're incapable of managing your own affairs. And once he's got that power of attorney and a doctor's letter to back it up, you'll have a very hard time getting out from under it. So what do? We get ahead of him. We set up a living trust with your house as the primary asset. We update your will to make your intentions crystal clear. And we designate someone you actually trust to make decisions for you if you ever can't make them yourself. Not Craig. Definitely not Craig. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. Is there anyone else? Another family member? A close friend? I thought about it, and the answer came to me immediately. My granddaughter, Amber. She's 19, about to finish her first year of college. She's the only one who... I trailed off, trying to find the words. The only one who treats you like a person and not a piggy bank? I laughed, even though it hurt. Something like that. 19 is young. We'd need a backup, someone older in case she's not able to serve. But we can make it work. And we can structure things so that she doesn't have access until she's 25, old enough to handle the responsibility.
He's literally sitting there, plotting to use his own daughter as a backup plan, while his mother is still in the next room. Let me ask you straight. If you heard your child talking about your life like you were already gone, would you burst in and lose it? Or would you stay quiet and strike back when they least expect it? I need to hear your strategy in the comments.
She's a good girl. She comes to see me just to see me. She calls on Sundays just to talk. She asks about my garden, my friends, my life. She's nothing like her father. Good. Then let's make sure she's protected too. Sarah pulled out more papers. Here's what I'm thinking. By the time I left her office, it was past noon and my head was spinning with legal terms. Trust, beneficiary, executor, pour-over will, fiduciary duty. But underneath the confusion, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control over my own life, my own choices, my own future. I stopped at the diner on Main Street and ordered a grilled cheese sandwich, the way I used to when Earl and I would come into town for errands. The same diner, the same booth by the window, the same red vinyl seats that had been there since before I was born. I sat there eating my sandwich and watching the people go by, and I thought about what I was doing. I was cutting my son out of my will, my own child. The boy I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through fevers, taught to ride a bike. The man who had become someone I didn't recognize, someone who saw his mother as an obstacle to overcome. It should have felt worse than it did. But mostly what I felt was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of hoping he'd change. Tired of being the one who always gave in, always smoothed things over, always put everyone else first. Earl's words came back to me, the ones from his letter. Take care of yourself first. The kids will figure it out. I was finally listening. When I got home, there was a car parked in my driveway. A car I didn't recognize. A rental, judging by the sticker on the bumper. My heart did a little skip as I pulled in behind it. A woman got out of the driver's side, young, with long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and a face I knew better than my own. "Grandma!" Amber ran across the lawn and threw her arms around me before I'd even gotten both feet out of the car. I held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, something fruity and young. She'd gotten taller since Christmas, or maybe I'd gotten shorter. At my age, it's hard to tell. "What are you doing here? I thought you had finals." "I finished my last one yesterday, art history. Got an A-, which means I only have to look at paintings for the rest of my life as a hobby, not as a career." She pulled back, her hands still on my shoulders, her eyes searching my face. "Grandma, what's going on? Dad's been acting weird. Mom's been acting weird. And then Dad asked me to... He wanted me to visit you more often, to check on you," he said, "like you were sick or something." I felt my chest tighten. "Did he say what he wanted you to check for?" "He said you'd been forgetting things, getting confused. He made it sound like..." She trailed off, and I saw the worry in her face. "Grandma, you're not sick, are you? You'd tell me if something was wrong? Let's go inside, honey. I'll make us some tea and tell you everything." We sat at Earl's old kitchen table, the same table where I'd sat with Craig and his folder of papers, and I told my granddaughter the truth. All of it. The woman at church, the power of attorney, the medical records request, the lawyer. Everything. Amber listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around her mug of tea, her face getting paler and paler. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said a word I'd never heard her use before. A word that, frankly, I agreed with entirely. That absolute piece of... She caught herself. "Sorry, Grandma." "Don't be sorry. I've been thinking the same thing. I can't believe this. I mean, I can, because Dad's always been about money, but this is..." She shook her head. "He's trying to steal your house while you're still living in it. That seems to be the plan. And he asked me to help." Her voice cracked. "He asked me to visit more, to keep an eye on you, and I thought it was because he finally cared. Because he was finally worried about you the way a son should be worried about his mother. But he was just using me. He wanted me to spy on you. I don't think you'd have done it." "Of course I wouldn't have." She slammed her hand on the table, and I saw Earl in her for a moment. The same flash of righteous anger, the same inability to hide what she was feeling. "You're my grandma. You're the only one in this family who actually talks to me like I'm a person. Dad just wants to know my grades. Mom wants to know if I'm dating anyone suitable. But you actually ask about my life, my friends, my classes. You care. Of course I care. And they don't." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "God, I've known it for years. I just didn't want to see it. Dad's always been like this, hasn't he? Taking and never giving anything back." I reached across the table and took her hand. "He wasn't always this way. When he was small, he was sweet, thoughtful. He used to make me birthday cards out of construction paper. He used to climb the oak tree out front and call down to me, 'Look, Mom, I'm a bird.' What happened to him? I don't know, honey. I've been asking myself that question for years." We sat there together as the afternoon light shifted through the window, two women from different generations, united by disappointment in the same man. Finally, Amber said, "What are you going to do?" "I'm protecting myself. I'm setting up a trust. I'm changing my will." I paused. "I want you to be my beneficiary, Amber, not your father. You." Her eyes went wide. "Grandma, I can't. That's a lot of responsibility. It won't happen until you're 25, and it won't happen until I'm gone, which I'm hoping won't be for a good while yet. I squeezed her hand, but I need someone I trust. Someone who won't sell this house the moment I'm in the ground. Someone who actually gives a damn about something besides money. She was crying now, tears running down her cheeks, but she was nodding. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll make you proud, Grandma. I promise." "You already do, honey. You already do." The next few days were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Sarah Chen worked fast. She could see the urgency. And by Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in her office, signing my name on documents that would protect everything I'd spent my life building. A revocable living trust with the house as the main asset. Beneficiary: Amber Lynn Morrison, my granddaughter, with access at age 25. A new will, superseding the old one, leaving the bulk of my estate to the trust. And in it, one line that I insisted on, even though Sarah said it wasn't strictly necessary. To my son, Craig David Whitmore, I leave the sum of $1, this being intentional and not an oversight. $1, just enough that he couldn't claim he'd been forgotten, couldn't challenge the will on the grounds that I'd somehow overlooked him. But symbolic, too. A message, in legal language, that said, "I see you. I know what you've done, and this is what you've earned." "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked as I signed the final page. "Once this is recorded, it'll be very difficult for him to contest." "That's the point." She nodded and gathered the papers. "I'll file everything today. Your son won't have any legal claim to your house, no matter what kind of power of attorney he tries to get. The trust supersedes it all." Good. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Like I'd finally set down a suitcase I didn't even know I'd been carrying. But I knew it wasn't over. Craig would find out. And when he did, there would be a reckoning. I didn't have to wait long. Friday evening, just after dinner, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Then another. 2 doors slammed, then a third. I looked out the window and saw Craig's car, his real one this time, the expensive German sedan. And behind it, a silver Lexus I didn't recognize. 3 people walking toward my front door. Craig, Patrice, and a man in a dark suit carrying a briefcase. They'd come loaded for bear, as Earl used to say. I took a deep breath, smoothed my sweater, and went to open the door before they could knock. Craig, Patrice. I looked at the man in the suit. "I don't believe we've met." "This is Gerald," Craig said, pushing past me into the house. "He's a friend, a lawyer. He's here to help explain some things." "I don't recall inviting any of you inside." Patrice gave me that look, the one that said she smelled something unpleasant, which was usually me. "Doris, don't be difficult. We're here to help you. Everyone wants to help me lately. It's remarkable how popular I've become." They spread out in my living room like they owned the place. Gerald set his briefcase on my coffee table, the one Earl had refinished the summer before he died, and started pulling out papers. Craig stood by the window with his arms crossed, trying to look authoritative. Patrice perched on the edge of my sofa, her designer bag clutched in her lap like a life preserver. "Mom," Craig said, "we need to talk about your situation. My situation. You've been making some concerning decisions lately, acting erratically. We're worried about you." Gerald cleared his throat. He had the smooth, practiced voice of someone who made a living telling people what they didn't want to hear. "Mrs. Whitmore, your son has brought some concerns to my attention. Memory issues, confusion, Difficulty managing your finances? Is that so? We think it might be time to consider some options. Assisted living, perhaps. Somewhere you can get the care you need. He shuffled his papers. Of course, that raises questions about your assets. This house, for instance. It would be a shame to let it sit empty while you're getting the help you need. Your son has suggested that transferring ownership might be the simplest solution. I looked at Craig. My son, who wouldn't meet my eyes. My son, who used to bring me dandelions in his sweaty little fist, who used to beg for one more bedtime story, who used to tell me I was the best mom in the whole world. Craig, I said quietly, look at me. He did. Reluctantly. Is this what you want? To take my house while I'm still alive? To ship me off to some facility so you can sell everything your father and I worked for? Mom, you're not understanding. This is for your own good. My own good. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've never done a single thing for my own good in your entire adult life. You've taken and taken and taken, and I let you because I loved you, because I thought that's what mothers do. Patrice made an impatient noise. Doris, this is exactly what we're talking about. These paranoid accusations, this hostility, it's not like you. Maybe it should have been. I turned to Gerald. You're a lawyer? Yes, ma'am. Then you should know that this house is held in a living trust. It's not in my name anymore, not in any way that would allow Craig or you to touch it. My will has been updated. My affairs are in perfect order. And my mental capacity is just fine, which I'm sure you'll discover if you try to have me declared incompetent. The room went very quiet. Craig's face had gone pale. What are you talking about? What trust? The one I set up this week. With the help of my own lawyer, a real one. You can't do that. I already did. Patrice stood up, her voice rising to that pitch that always made my teeth hurt. This is ridiculous. You're 71 years old. You can't just cut us out. I'm not cutting you out of anything. I'm protecting what's mine. I looked at Craig again. I've given you money for years. The down payment on your house, your car, your daughter's school. Tens of thousands of dollars, all told. Money you promised to pay back but never did. That was different. That was family helping family. No, that was me helping you. Always me helping you. And what have you ever done for me, Craig? When your father died, you came to the funeral and left the next morning. You've visited 47 times in 12 years, and every single time you wanted something. Not once have you come just to see me, just to have coffee with your mother. His jaw worked. I could see him trying to find an argument, trying to spin this into something that made him look like the good guy. But even Craig couldn't bend reality that far. The house is mine, I said. It will stay mine until I die. And when I die, it goes to Amber, not to you. Amber? Patrice practically shrieked. Our daughter? She's 19. She'll be 25 when she gets access. Old enough. I walked to the front door and opened it. The evening air rushed in, cool and clean. Now, I think it's time for you to leave. Gerald was already packing up his briefcase. He knew when he was barking up the wrong tree. Patrice grabbed her purse and stormed out without a word, her heels clicking angrily on the porch steps. Craig stayed behind for a moment, standing in my living room, looking at me like I was a stranger. You went behind my back, he said, after everything I've done for you. I almost laughed. Name one thing. His mouth opened. closed, opened again. Nothing came out. That's what I thought. He walked past me to the door, then stopped, turning back. His face was red, his hands clenched at his sides. "This isn't over, Mom." "Yes, Craig. It is." I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, listening to the sound of car engines starting, tires crunching on gravel, my family driving away. The house was quiet. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak in the third floorboard from the window. I walked to Earl's chair and sat down, running my hand over the worn leather. My hand was trembling now, not from fear, not from sadness, but from the sheer exhaustion of finally saying what I'd kept bottled up for years. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like myself again. The days that followed were strange ones, quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar, like the house was holding its breath. Craig didn't call. I didn't expect him to. Patrice certainly didn't call. That was a relief, honestly. I'd had enough of her pinched disapproval to last several lifetimes. Amber called every day, sometimes twice. She'd drive up on weekends, bringing groceries I didn't need, and company I desperately did. We'd sit in the kitchen and drink tea and talk about everything and nothing. Her classes, her friends, that boy she was too shy to admit she liked. "His name's Marcus," she finally told me one Saturday, blushing like a schoolgirl. "He's in my biology lab. He's nice, funny. He makes terrible jokes that shouldn't be funny, but somehow are. Does he treat you well?" "Yeah." Her face softened in a way that made my heart squeeze. "He does." "Then that's what matters. The rest is just details." She looked at me with those big brown eyes, so much like Earl's, and I felt something settle in my chest. This girl, this young woman, was the best thing to come out of my family in 30 years. And whatever happened next, I knew she'd be okay. She was made of stronger stuff than her father. About 2 weeks after the confrontation, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten on a plain white envelope, the handwriting achingly familiar. I opened it slowly, half expecting legal threats or demands. But it was just a single sheet of paper, folded once, with 2 words written in Craig's handwriting. "I'm sorry." That was all. No explanation. No excuses. Just those 2 words, sitting there on the page like stones at the bottom of a river. I read them several times. I thought about calling him, asking what he meant, giving him a chance to explain. The mother in me. The part that still remembered him as a baby, as a toddler, as a little boy who needed her. Wanted to believe this was the beginning of something. A change. A reconciliation. But I'd spent too many years believing in changes that never came. Too many years hoping Craig would become the man Earl and I had raised him to be. And hope, when it's not backed by action, is just another word for denial. I put the letter in a drawer and closed it. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday we'd find our way back to each other, my son and me. But it wouldn't be because I'd forgiven too quickly or forgotten too easily. It would be because he'd earned it. Because he'd proven, through actions and not just words, that he understood what he'd done wrong. Until then, I had my house, my garden, my granddaughter, my life. And that was enough. Spring came early that year, the crocuses pushing up through the last of the snow while the trees were still bare. I started spending more time outside, puttering in the garden the way I used to when Earl was alive. There's something about digging in the dirt that puts things in perspective. The soil doesn't care about your problems. It just wants you to show up, do the work, and trust that something will grow. One Saturday in late March, Amber came over with a surprise. 2 big bags of soil and a flat of tomato seedlings. "Grandma," she announced, setting them down on the porch with a thump, "we're planting a garden." "We are? You keep talking about how Grandpa used to grow tomatoes, how you haven't planted anything since he died." She put her hands on her hips, looking so much like Earl in that moment that my heart squeezed. "So we're fixing that today." We spent the whole afternoon in the backyard, turning over the old garden beds, mixing in compost, planting the seedlings in neat little rows. My knees ached and my back complained, and I got dirt under my fingernails that wouldn't come out for days. It was perfect. "Grandpa would be proud of you," Amber said, as we surveyed our work, both of us filthy and tired and happier than we'd been in weeks. Standing up for yourself like that, making your own choices. "I think he would be more proud of you." "Me? I didn't do anything." "You did more than you know." I put my arm around her shoulders, not caring about the dirt. "You reminded me that I still had people worth fighting for." She leaned her head against mine, and we stood there, watching the sun go down behind the old oak tree, the one Craig used to climb when he was small and life was simpler. A few weeks later, I got another visitor. Not Craig, not yet, maybe not ever, but someone I didn't expect. Walter Hendricks came by one afternoon, driving his old blue pickup truck that rattled like it was held together with wishes and duct tape. He brought a pie his wife Helen had made, apple, with a lattice crust that was almost too pretty to eat, and a bottle of the good bourbon Earl used to drink. We sat on the porch, watching the neighborhood kids play in the street, and he told me stories about Earl that I'd never heard before. The time they got lost on a fishing trip and had to walk 12 miles back to the car because neither of them would admit they didn't know where they were going. The time Earl accidentally set his pants on fire at a barbecue and didn't notice until Walter threw a bucket of water on him. "He was one of the good ones," Walter said. "I miss him every day." "Me too. But you know what?" He looked at me, his eyes sharp despite his age. "I think he'd be real proud of what you did. Standing up for yourself, not letting those vultures pick you apart. They're my family, Walter. Family doesn't mean you have to be a doormat." He took a sip of bourbon. "Earl knew that. He worried about you toward the end. Worried that you'd let people take advantage of your good heart?" "He told you that?" "He told me a lot of things. Man knows he's dying. He says what needs to be said." Walter looked out at the street. "He made me promise to keep an eye on you, not like a nurse or a guardian, just a friend. Someone who'd tell you the truth when you needed to hear it." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "You kept that promise." "I tried." He smiled, just a little. "And you did the rest yourself." Summer came and went. The tomatoes ripened, red and perfect, just the way Earl used to grow them. I made sauce and canned it, filling the basement shelves the way my mother taught me. The smell of basil and garlic filled the house for days, and for the first time in 12 years, it felt like home again. Amber came up for a week in July, bringing Marcus with her. A tall, quiet young man who looked at my granddaughter like she hung the moon. He had kind eyes and a firm handshake, and he insisted on helping me weed the garden, even though he'd never touched dirt in his life. "I like him," I told her after dinner, when Marcus had gone outside to call his parents. "Yeah?" She grinned. "I like him too. He's got kind eyes. That matters more than most people think. Your grandfather had kind eyes." She hugged me tight. "Thanks, Grandma. For everything." "For what?" "For being you. For not letting Dad push you around." for showing me that it's okay to stand up for yourself even when it's hard." She pulled back, her eyes bright. "You're kind of my hero, you know that." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just hugged her again and held on tight. By fall, things had settled into a new kind of normal. I had my routines: church on Sundays, bridge club on Tuesdays, gardening in between. I had dinner with Walter and Helen every other week, their house full of the comfortable clutter of 60 years of marriage. I had Amber's phone calls and her visits, and the steady knowledge that somewhere out there, someone actually cared about me as a person, and not as an asset to be liquidated. Craig stayed away. I heard through the grapevine, small towns talk, you know how it is, that he and Patrice were having money troubles. The house they couldn't afford, the cars they couldn't pay off, the lifestyle they'd built on credit and borrowed time. "Penny wise and pound foolish," my grandmother would have said. The chickens were coming home to roost, just like I'd always known they would. Part of me felt sorry for him, the mother part, the part that never quite goes away no matter what your child does. But a bigger part of me knew that this was his bed to lie in. His choices had consequences, and it wasn't my job anymore to protect him from them. One cold November evening, I was sitting in Earl's chair, reading a mystery novel, when my phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mom, can we talk? Not about money or the house, just talk. I miss you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, "Maybe. When you're ready to be honest, I'll be here." I didn't know if he'd respond. I didn't know if things would ever be right between us. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Others can, but it takes time and effort and a willingness to admit you were wrong. But I left the door open, just a crack. Because that's what you do with family, even the ones who've hurt you. You give them the chance to prove they can do better. Whether they take that chance is up to them. I keep thinking about that woman at church, the one whose name I never learned. The one who stopped me by the coffee table with the stale donuts and told me the truth about my own son. She didn't have to do that. She could have kept quiet, minded her own business, stayed out of a messy family situation that had nothing to do with her. That's what most people would have done. That's what I probably would have done in her shoes. But she spoke up. She took a risk. She said something when saying nothing would have been easier. And because of her, I'm still living in my own house, making my own decisions, sleeping in my own bed. Because of her, I found out what my son was planning before he could carry it out. Because of her, I woke up. A stranger at church saved my life. Not in a dramatic way, not like pulling me from a burning building or pushing me out of the path of a bus. But she saved it all the same. She gave me back control over my own future, and that's worth more than I can ever repay. I tried to find her once a few months later, asked around at church, described what she looked like, but nobody seemed to know who I was talking about. Maybe she'd moved away. Maybe she went to a different service. Maybe she was just a visitor passing through who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I don't know. And I suppose it doesn't matter. What matters is that I listened, that I acted, that I finally stopped putting everyone else first and started fighting for myself. It only took me 71 years to learn that lesson. But better late than never, as my grandmother used to say. There's a particular time of evening, right when the sun starts to go down and the light turns golden, that I like to sit on the front porch and watch the world go quiet. The oak tree casts long shadows across the lawn. The birds settle into their nests. The neighborhood kids get called home for dinner. I sit in the chair Earl built years ago, the one that creaks when you lean back too far, and I think about all the years I've spent in this house. The good ones and the bad ones. The ones I remember clearly and the ones that have faded into a soft blur. I think about Earl and how much I still miss him after all this time. I think about Craig and whether he'll ever become the man I hoped he would be. I think about Amber and the future stretching out ahead of her, full of possibility. And I think about myself, the woman I was, the woman I became, the woman I'm still becoming, even now, even at 71, even when most people would say I've already had my chance to be whoever I'm going to be. But here's the thing I've learned. You're never too old to change. You're never too old to stand up for yourself. You're never too old to decide that the life you've been living isn't the life you want anymore. It's not easy. God knows it's not easy. Changing at any age takes courage, and changing when you're old takes even more, because you've got so many years of habit weighing you down. But it can be done. I'm living proof. Last week, Amber sent me a photograph. Her and Marcus, standing in front of some fancy building I didn't recognize, both of them grinning like fools. Marcus got a job offer, she wrote, and I've been accepted to graduate school, same city. We're moving in together. I called her immediately. Is this the real thing? You and Marcus? Yeah, Grandma. Her voice was soft, happy, sure. I think it is. Then I'm thrilled for you, both of you. There's more. She paused, and I could hear her smiling through the phone. We're going to name our first kid after you, if we have one. Dorothy, if it's a girl. After you. I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life. But they were good tears, the best kind. I'm telling you all this because I want you to know that you're not alone. If you've got a child who sees you as a burden instead of a blessing, you're not alone. If you've spent years giving and getting nothing back, you're not alone. If you've ever sat at your own kitchen table, looking at papers you didn't ask for, wondering when your family became strangers, you're not alone. And if you've got that little voice in the back of your head, the one that keeps whispering that something's wrong, that you're being taken advantage of, that the people who are supposed to love you don't have your best interests at heart, listen to it. Please. That voice knows what it's talking about. That voice has been paying attention even when you weren't. I keep wondering how many other women like me are out there. Women who gave everything to their families and got nothing back. Women who are being pushed around by children who should know better. Women who are sitting in their own houses right now, signing papers they don't understand because someone they love told them it was for the best. Are you one of them? Because if you are, I'd like to hear from you. Not because I want company in my misery, I'm past that now, but because I think there's power in speaking up, in saying, this happened to me, and hearing someone else say, me too. We're not crazy. We're not paranoid. We're not confused old women who don't understand how the world works. We're survivors, and our stories matter. Tell me yours. I promise I'll listen. Sometimes I look back at the photographs and try to figure out where it went wrong. There's one picture I keep coming back to. Craig's 5th birthday. He's standing in the backyard, the same backyard where I planted tomatoes this spring, wearing a paper crown and holding a sparkler. His face is pure joy. Mouth open in a laugh, eyes crinkled. Not a care in the world. Earl is in the background, carrying a tray of hot dogs from the grill, and I'm just out of frame. You can see my shadow on the grass. That boy in the photograph doesn't look like someone who would grow up to try and steal his mother's house. He looks like what he was, a happy kid with parents who loved him and a future full of possibility. What happened between then and now? I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. Was it something I did? Something I didn't do? Was there a moment when I should have said no instead of yes, drawn a line instead of letting it blur? Maybe it was Patrice. God knows she's been poisoned from the start, with her rearranging things and her pointed comments and her way of making everyone around her feel like they're failing some test they didn't know they were taking. But that's too easy, blaming the wife. Craig made his own choices. He chose to marry her, chose to let her influence him, chose to go along with whatever scheme she cooked up. Maybe it was the money. When Earl and I were young, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We scrimped and saved and went without so we could build something for our future. But Craig never had to do that. We gave him everything we didn't have. Nice clothes, a car for his 16th birthday, college paid in full. We wanted him to have an easier life than ours. Instead, we taught him that things just appeared when you wanted them, that someone else would always take care of the hard parts. I think about that a lot now. The ways we fail our children by trying to protect them. The ways love, when it's too soft, turns into something that weakens instead of strengthens. But in the end, it doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is where we go next, and where I'm going is forward. One day at a time, one foot in front of the other, into whatever years I have left. Earl would be proud of that, I think. He always said I was stronger than I knew. Maybe he was right. The last time I saw Craig, really saw him, not just as a threat to be managed, was 3 months after the confrontation. He showed up on a Wednesday afternoon, no warning, no Patrice, no lawyer. Just him. I was in the garden when I heard the car. I knew the sound of that engine by now, had learned to dread it. But something was different this time. The way he got out of the car, the way he walked up the driveway. Slower, heavier, like a man carrying a weight he couldn't set down. I wiped the dirt off my hands and stood up, my knees protesting the way they always did. He stopped a few feet away, just looking at me. "Mom," he said. "Craig." We stood there for a long moment, neither of us moving. The birds sang in the oak tree. A car drove past on the street. Life went on around us while we tried to figure out what to say. "I got your text," he said finally. "The one that said you'd talk when I was ready to be honest." "I remember." "I think I'm ready." He swallowed hard, or at least I'm trying to be. I didn't invite him inside. Not yet. But I didn't tell him to leave either. "So talk," I said. And he did. He talked about the pressure from Patrice, the way she'd been pushing him for years to deal with my house, my money, my life. He talked about the debts they'd racked up, the lifestyle they couldn't afford, the hole they'd dug themselves into. He talked about fear. Fear of losing everything. Fear of disappointing his wife. Fear of being the failure she always implied he was. He didn't make excuses. Or maybe he did, a little. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes between explanations and excuses, between understanding why someone did something and forgiving them for it. But he also said the words I needed to hear. "I was wrong, Mom. What I tried to do, it was wrong. And I'm sorry. Not because it didn't work, because it was a terrible thing to do to your own mother." I looked at him, this middle-aged man standing in my garden, and I tried to see the little boy with the paper crown and the sparkler. He was in there somewhere, I thought, buried under years of bad choices and worse company. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said. "I know. I don't know if I ever will be. I know that too. But I'm willing to try." I took a breath. Slowly, carefully, And only if you show me that you've actually changed, not just that you're sorry you got caught." He nodded. His eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. Craig never cried, not even as a child. He just blinked and looked away, the way men do when they're trying to hold themselves together. "I can do that," he said. "I want to do that. We'll see." He left after that. No hugs, no promises, no dramatic reconciliation. Just two people who had hurt each other, standing in a garden, trying to find a way forward. I don't know if we'll make it. I don't know if the damage can be repaired, or if some things, once broken, stay broken forever. But I'm willing to find out. And that, for now, is enough. There's a bird that comes to my garden every morning, a cardinal, bright red, with a song that sounds like someone whistling for a lost dog. He sits on the fence and sings, and sometimes I sing back, which probably makes me look crazy to the neighbors, but I don't care anymore. Earl used to say that cardinals were messengers from the other side, that when you see one, it means someone who loved you is checking in. I don't know if I believe that, but I like the idea of it. I like thinking that somewhere, somehow, Earl is still looking out for me. The garden is doing well this year, better than it has in a decade. The tomatoes are coming in thick and red, the basil is fragrant, the zucchini are threatening to take over the whole bed like they do every summer. I've been canning and freezing and giving vegetables away to the neighbors, anyone who'll take them. Helen Hendricks says I'm trying to feed the whole town. Maybe she's right. There's something satisfying about it, though. Growing things, giving them away. Watching people's faces when they bite into a tomato that actually tastes like something. I've started taking walks in the evening, too. Just around the block, nothing strenuous. My hip doesn't like it when I push too hard, but the movement helps, and so does the fresh air, and so does seeing the neighborhood I've lived in for 43 years through new eyes. There's a house on the corner that just got painted blue. Bright blue, the color of a robin's egg. The neighbors have been complaining. It doesn't fit the character of the street, they say. But I love it. Someone made a bold choice. Someone decided they wanted their house to be seen. I think about that a lot. Being seen. Spending so many years trying to be invisible, trying not to take up too much space, trying not to be a burden. And now, finally, learning that I have a right to be here, that my life matters, that I don't have to apologize for existing. It's a strange thing to learn at 71, but I'm grateful for it. The sun's going down now. The light is turning golden. The oak tree is casting its long shadow across the lawn, just like it has for 43 years. Tomorrow, I'll wake up in my own bed, in my own house, and make my own choices about how to spend my day. Maybe I'll garden. Maybe I'll call Amber. Maybe I'll just sit on the porch and watch the world go by. Whatever I do, it'll be my decision, my life, my future. And that, after everything, is worth more than any house could ever be. I want to tell you one more thing before I go. Last week, I was sitting on the porch when a car I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. My heart did that little skip it always does now when unexpected visitors arrive. A reflex from the bad times, I suppose. But this time, it wasn't Craig. It wasn't Patrice. It wasn't anyone I needed to be afraid of. It was a woman about my age, maybe a little younger, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had seen some things. She got out of the car slowly, the way people do when their bodies have started to slow down, and walked up to the porch. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she said. "Doris Whitmore?" "That's me." I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Ruth. Ruth Capaldi. I heard about what happened, what your son tried to do, from a friend at the church. I tensed up. This is how it starts, I thought. People talking, people knowing my business, people judging. But Ruth didn't look like she was there to judge. I wanted to tell you, she said, that the same thing happened to me 6 years ago. My daughter and her husband, they tried to take my house, said I was losing my mind, that I couldn't manage my own affairs. They almost succeeded. I sat up straighter. What stopped them? I did. She smiled, but there was something fierce behind it. I got a lawyer. I fought back, and I won. But it took everything I had. And for years afterward, I thought I was the only one. The only mother whose child would do something like that. You're not. I know that now. She reached into her purse and pulled out a piece of paper. A few of us, we started meeting. Women like us. Women who've been through it. We call ourselves the Survivors Circle. It's not official or anything, just a bunch of old ladies drinking coffee and talking about how our kids turned out to be jackals. I laughed. I couldn't help it. We meet at the community center on Thursday afternoons, she continued, handing me the paper. If you ever want to come, no pressure. But sometimes it helps, you know, knowing you're not alone, hearing someone else say, me too. I took the paper. It had an address, a time, and a phone number written in careful, old lady handwriting. Thank you, I said. I'll think about it. She nodded. That's all I ask. She left after that, driving away in her sensible sedan, and I sat on the porch for a long time, holding that piece of paper and thinking, maybe I will go. Maybe I'll sit in a circle with other women who've been through what I've been through, and we'll drink bad coffee and tell our stories, and we'll realize that we're not crazy, not paranoid, not weak. Just people who trusted the wrong people and paid the price? Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll stay here in my house, in my garden, with my tomatoes and my cardinal and my memories of Earl. Maybe that's enough. Either way, the choice is mine, and that's what matters. The sun's going down now. The light is turning golden. The oak tree is casting its long shadow across the lawn, just like it has for 43 years. I can hear the cardinal singing somewhere in the branches. A few houses down, someone's grilling dinner, and the smell of charcoal drifts through the air. The neighborhood kids have gone inside, but I can see the blue glow of television screens through windows, families settling in for the evening. Life goes on. That's the thing about life. It goes on whether you're ready or not, whether you want it to or not. And at some point, you have to decide, are you going to go with it, or are you going to fight against the current until you drown? I'm going with it. Finally. After all these years. Tomorrow I'll wake up in my own bed, in my own house, and make my own choices about how to spend my day. Maybe I'll garden. Maybe I'll call Amber. Maybe I'll go to that Survivors Circle meeting and drink bad coffee with women who understand. Whatever I do, it'll be my decision, my life, my future. And that, after everything, is worth more than any house could ever be.
Doris didn't just save her house. She saved her sanity. She's finally free. Thanks for sticking around. You guys are the best. Look, here's my take on this. The son was literally trying to get a doctor's letter to bypass her. That is predatory, plain and simple. What I love about Doris is that she didn't scream, didn't cry. She just moved her assets and let him find out the hard way. A lot of you will probably say she should have sued him, but honestly, leaving a snake with nothing but an empty bank account is a much louder message. Do you think she was too cold, or was this the only way to handle a son like that? Drop a like if you're with Doris. See you in the next one.